Look at us go. Moto Academy podcast. We're just absolutely firing on all syllables lately. Episode 114, the number one podcast in all of motocross. You can decide if there's an R in there or not. Today is going to be a fun episode. I'm going to just be by myself for the first 30 minutes. I know some of you guys like those episodes. And in doing so, I'm going to answer some of Ethan's talking points, some of your guys' podcast questions. And then for the second half of the podcast, we're going to bring on Yeeted and Deleted, who joined some other fellow Moto Academy members in the 24-hour race at Glen Helen. I know they had a podcast or a live stream with Jackson and Dave Drakes inside of the Moto Academy app on Sunday to do a little debrief, but I want to get caught up and I want to hear what happened because I was supposed to be there and my darn schedule didn't allow for it. So the show went on without me, and it seems as though they did just fine and dandy without me there, but let's face it, I have a lot of FOMO, and that will be an interesting live stream. So hang in there for the second half of this podcast. Before we get started, we've got tour dates coming up. Go to themotoacademy.com. We are consistently adding new dates. I know I say that all the time, but I mean it. There's always new stuff getting dropped on the website. So check out what's near you. We're basically filling all the gaps. So essentially, it's going to be pretty hard to be in a region where we aren't. And hopefully in the latter end of 24 or in 2025, we're going to be somewhere near where you are. So go check it out. We also added our second summer camp to the schedule. It's a fish. We're doing Salt Lake City in July. No, we're doing Salt Lake City summer camp in August. And we're doing Winchester Speed Park in New Hampshire, July 14th to July 18th. So New England summer camp, I'm pumped. It's going to be, I'm sure, beautiful weather. We're going to have access to the motocross track and across the street on the supercross track, which, by the way, news alert, I'm rebuilding. We are rebuilding. So Moto Academy is collaborating with Winchester Speed Park, and we're having Robbie Marshall rebuild the supercross pad to the extreme. And how we're doing that is we have found a little gold mine of really good dirt, and we dug a whole bunch of dirt because the track that existed there, well, about the last 10 years or so, was what it was for a lot of the reason because they didn't have the dirt to be able to do what they needed. So I approached Deb and Fran, the current owners, and had the idea of, hey, why don't we bring back like the iconic Winchester Supercross that I remember from 2005, 2006, 2007 days of a proper amateur Supercross track. And they were super open-minded to the idea. And that's what we're going to do. So it is in the process of being built right now as we speak, which is, it happened quick. The weather's good. So we had a couple of phone calls, and once we located the dirt, that was a few week hold up, was just trying to figure out, okay, where do we source this dirt from? Because that was part of what made the Winchester Supercross so good, is the dirt was amazing. And in New England, it can be pretty difficult to find dirt that doesn't have a lot of rocks in it. But we did it. We found the perfect dirt. And basically it was like, all right, let's get this thing built before winter. So maybe we could get some time on it before winter. And then that way, first thing in spring, that track can be up and operational, especially the timing is perfect because this year we have MetLife, Gillette Supercross, and Philly Supercross. So we have 3 in the New England area. I think people are going to be pumped about Supercross. Everybody wants to be able to ride it one way or another. I really believe that I can teach it, maybe better than anybody, and explain how to hit all this Supercross specific obstacles. And also I think I have a really good concept of how the track should be designed to be a proper segue. So it's going to be a value to any skill level. And included in that would be a lot of the New England guys that are very fast and would typically only show up to try and qualify for Southwick. Now it's like, let's get these guys good at Supercross. There's nothing that's stopping them other than the ability to learn it. So if I can teach all these talented New England guys how to ride a Supercross track, which I believe I could do pretty quickly. You just got to learn whoops, on-offs. They know how to hit corners. They know how to hit jumps. So it's really just dealing with a few specific techniques. And I think we're going to have a lot more high-level Supercross guys coming from New England, which will be really exciting. And yeah, that's all happening as we speak. I don't know how I started talking about that. Oh, because we have the summer camp. Yeah, so with that, Moto Academy will be doing a Supercross series in collaboration with Winchester. So we'll have a race series next year, and we're going to be holding Supercross specific training sessions on that track all year round. So one of the times to be able to access that will be the summer camp, where we'll be bouncing back and forth across the street. I got deep into drinking coffee the last few months, and to be quite honest, I don't really even love how it makes me feel. It kind of gets rid of my appetite for most of the day, which I need to be eating more anyhow. And as soon as I cross that threshold of having drank too much coffee, it just turns into like a jittery, not so good feeling. I'm talking like one sip too much, and I can feel that. I don't know if you guys can relate, but everything that is inside of Magic Mind. So you have the mushrooms, lion mane's mushroom, you have L-theanine, ashwagandha, turmeric to kind of take that edge off a little bit, lower the stress. You have rhodiola, don't even know what that is. Matcha for calm energy, and then you have some vitamins as well. So you really achieve much of what people are striving for in coffee, but let's face it, in a much healthier way. And my goal right now is trying to optimize every little part of what I have going on. And Magic Mind, to replace my coffee intake, is going to be one of those steps. So go to magicmind.com, use code TMA20. And I honestly, I think it tastes amazing. Use code TMA20, save some money on your order, give it a shot. Again, yeah, it tastes super good. We're 7 minutes in and I'm still introing and prefacing things. How horrible am I? I'm going to dive in. I'm going to read a paragraph of a book that I use as kind of like a pick up and read a page type of deal. This is Eckhart Tolle, A New Earth. And I just opened it right before this podcast to read a page to kind of get me in the zone. And I wanted to share it with you guys, because this is incredibly important, and I can explain after. Although the body is very intelligent, it cannot tell the difference between an actual situation and a thought. It reacts to every thought as if it were a reality. It doesn't know it is just a thought. To the body, a worrisome, fearful thought means I am in danger, and it responds accordingly, even though you may be lying in a warm and comfortable bed at night. The heart beats faster, muscles contract, breathing becomes rapid. There's a buildup of energy, but since the energy is only a mental fiction, the energy has no outlet. Part of it is fed back to the mind and generates even more anxious thought, while the rest of the energy turns toxic and interferes with the harmonious function of the body. So when that mind sends the signal to the body of stress, of anxiety, of those made up thoughts, as maybe you're laying in bed at night before you go to sleep, it quite literally doesn't know the difference between you having that made up thought and you being chased down by a tiger in the woods. And your body, what it does is it takes that information literally, and then it goes into action, shutting down all of your kind of autonomous functions, like digestion, for example, and to be able to feed the energy and the blood to your extremities so that you can run from that thing. And over time, when you're living in that state of stress and your amygdala is just signaling danger, 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 you just become completely depleted of everything, and all of your bodily functions aren't able to work properly, and your body is whacked completely out of stasis. Over time, I believe that's what causes cancer. And anything that really goes wrong with you. So it's difficult because I think everybody to some extent has those thoughts that come in, but to make you feel better, and this is a way that I describe it, this is a way that I understand it, and to me it makes sense, is that those thoughts that are rolling in through your head are just simply habits that you have formed. So if you can think of those connections in your brain as just habits, then one connection at a time, you can rewire and you can form new habits and new thought patterns so that your automatic doesn't have to be just stress and anxiousness and all of those negative emotions that you can think of. but instead it can be either positive or maybe just nothing, or a lot less going on, right? I think Allie makes fun of me because half the time she thinks there's nothing going on in my head. And to some extent, that is kind of true. Like, I'm pretty good at being able to just sit in a moment and not have my mind go a million miles an hour. And there's something to be said for that. Okay. Does that make sense? Hopefully that resonated with one person listening. What I'm going to do different too is usually I would chug this whole thing in one. I'm going to sip it throughout the episode and see how that goes instead. Some of these questions right off the bat are ones that we covered with Cade last episode, and maybe things that I didn't answer myself. So I'm going to answer some of them myself for you guys here. And again, my goal always in doing this is seeing if I can say something that will just hit your ear the right way and resonate with you. That is always my goal. My goal in this podcast is not to be looked at as the authority. It's not to be looked at as the end all be all of accurate information. Just me sharing experience and sharing things as I learn them, and hopefully doing my best to explain it in a way to where it can help one person. And that's it. What's your pre-race strategy? Well, what's interesting is I haven't redeveloped the pre-race strategy since I've got this far along in sort of the mindset practice that I've been practicing the last 2 years. The last season that I raced in 2023 Supercross, I was getting there. Like, I had just really started getting there, but I hadn't began to apply a lot of that to the racing aspect yet. It was more so like all of the things outside of racing. And one of the big things I believe is like being able to, you want to be able to have a process to where you can trigger the zone. Extremely simple to do in concept, difficult to do with consistency. But the best races that you guys would have had and I've ever had in my life are the races where you lose track of time, where it seems easy, all of those things that you hear people say when they've had a good race. And that is because they're dropped down to a certain mental state. A lot of times you can get from beta down to an alpha state, which is almost get on the verge of being meditative. And it's where you're present. You're in the present moment. That's why you would lose track of time. You're not trying to force things. You're not trying to think one step ahead, which is where mistakes are made. You're not worried about the mistake that you just made and living in the past. You're just the effort that you're exerting and the difficulty of the thing of which that you are doing kind of meets like that nice middle ground. So you're not forcing, and that's where that flow state is found. Your best shot of finding that flow state consistently is by creating a trigger. And we talked about this on the podcast with Cade, but yeah, for me, it's going to be trying to create a trigger while I'm sitting on the line. It can be something very, very basic to where it just tells my mind and body, okay, this is it. It's go time. You don't want to leave too much time in between the trigger and when you're actually out there doing the thing, because it leaves time to be distracted, have conversations, and you're kind of right back out of that zone. So I didn't ever have a pre-race strategy. I don't have one yet, and I will, though, create one next time that I go and race. So, guys, it can be anything. It can be absolutely anything. You could whack yourself on the head if you want. It can be just when your goggles go onto your helmet. It can be when you're strapping your helmet as you're putting it on. It can be when your bike starts. Maybe you close your eyes and you just rev it a couple of times a certain way. That's just like part of your trigger. I mean, you could get as creative as you want with it. Next question, how do you bounce back from perceived failures? I think I touched on that one quite a lot with Cade. And that was by maybe changing your definition a little bit of failure and maybe pulling it out of your vocabulary a little bit more. Because I think what I had said and what I at least feel now is that to me, every word means something maybe slightly different to everybody else. To me, failure means like almost an accumulation of bad events going on to where something was like definitively bad. And I'm at a point in my life right now where I don't really judge, I I've judged anything as definitively bad in quite a while. So I self-reflect consistently, multiple times a day, every single day, on all of the actions that I'm doing. And with that self-reflection, I'm able to make adjustments and course correct when I need to. And that then avoids any major failures. You mess up constantly and you make mistakes and make the wrong choice constantly, but you can kind of find your way instead of like going one direction into the wrong path for too long. Does that make sense? I like how this stuff makes me feel, especially when I drink it slow. Next question. In your opinion, what's the benefit of having a strong support system when it comes to racing and dirt bike? Strong support system, period, is completely invaluably important to the cellular level. Like I read a book called The Biology of Belief by Bruce Lipton, in which he talked about there being two petri dishes of the same cell put into both, but in different environments. And that single cell will adapt to the environment that it's in. So as a person, you're going to, you are who you're surrounded by to certainly some extent. And that applies to every part of your life. It is so important to pick the right people around you. I mean, holy cow. Can't stress that enough. I think I was very lucky a lot of my life I did that almost unintentionally and unconsciously for most of my life. I was just like, I was lucky to have the right people kind of end up there. Now I know, and I consciously make that decision, but for the longest time I didn't. And it was just like, thank goodness, I just had a lot of the right type of people around, which was super, super, super helpful. Super helpful, because there's a fine line too. You also want people that can kind of check you on your stuff. Like, I find it being the CEO of Moto Academy and being in charge and having a team of employees that are under me, it's also easy for it to go to the other end of things, where it's like people can become yes men because you're sort of in charge, and they end up just saying yes because you said that this is what you want to do. And even if it's not the right thing, sometimes people will say yes. So you want to be careful, and not to say my team is not a bunch of yes men, but it's easy to cultivate a team into that by accident. And so, yeah, you got to find that balance too, if that makes sense. If that makes sense, guys, solo episode. It's going to go off the rails. 100% going to go off the rails. 3 tips for making adjustments to suspension at the track. Tip number 1, don't touch it. Usually it's not the suspension's fault, it's your fault. Tip number 2, if you've addressed that and made sure and asked the Moto Academy that it's not your fault, then the next tip, actually, believe it or not, would be set your sag. Do you know how many people I ask, hey, have you ever checked the sag? Like, where are you at as far as riding level goes, ride height goes? And most people, I'm talking 9 out of 10 people, have not set their sag, and that could throw everything off. So set your sag, usually, and this changes for everybody depending on preference as well, but like, 103, 105, 110, somewhere in that range. You check it and it's at like 125 mil, or it's at 90, then you're probably not on the right track. So get that close. Tip number 3 for suspension would be maybe try going softer for once, because a lot of people go the opposite and they just go stiff, stiff, stiff. A lot of bikes that I get in at class are just too stiff. And their excuse is, oh, well, I'm 200 pounds, but yet they're a C-class rider, and I can look on their fork to see how much they're using, and they're using none of it. But tip number 1 is the important one there, and I would say a lot of times find the root of the problem. A lot of times fixing a suspension issue is putting a Band-Aid on the larger issue that is your potential lack of technique. Sorry. And that can apply for high-level riders as well. By the way, this is Army issued. I get questions on this all the time. I have a couple of army issued jackets, and then I have this. Forget what this is called. It's like the underlayer to the jacket. And yeah, I'm just gifted them all the time. So thank you guys, because I do wear them all the time. All the time. As soon as it starts to get cold at class, I either have this on or I have that top layer, kind of the waterproof top layer. And they're awesome. So thank you guys. And thank you for your service as well. Ton of military in the Moto Academy. A ton. 3 essential items to bring to the track. Hydration. Holy cow. Can't tell you how many times I've showed up to the track and had nothing to drink, or I ran out of what I needed to drink. Get some electrolytes in there. Toss some element in the truck. Get some water, some spring water, not purified. Number 2, chain lube. I never have chain lube at the track, and you really should be lubing that bad boy each time you get off. And instead of mooching off other people, which is what I do every single time, bring some chain lube. What's another thing? 3 essentials to bring to the track. Probably, bring 2 socks. Multiple times lately, I've accidentally just brought 1 sock to the track, and I don't know what's up with that, but I've been on a hot streak. So just make sure you count. If you can count to 2, just make sure you got both socks, because there's nothing worse, if you guys can relate to this, than wearing your knee pads or knee braces and having to have an ankle sock on and not the high pull-up sock. If you've never experienced the high pull-up sock with like the latex thing above it that goes all the way up to the basically your crotch, get it, because it's horrible to ride with ankle socks on once you've experienced the proper sock and sleeve combination. Oh, man. Ethan, are you trying to get me canceled? Top 3 riders of all time. Oh, I'm going to piss people off with this, but I'm just going to go off the top of my head. I'm going to put Jet in the top 3. I'm going to put Jeremy McGrath in the top 3, and I'm going to put Ricky Carmichael in the top 3. And man, depending on what time and day you ask me that question, it'd be different people in there, because I have so many people that I loved, and I think that were amazing. A lot of underrated ones in there as well. But yeah, and for people are going to be furious that I put Jet in there, but I think he's already I'll give you another one. Stefan Everts, James Stewart, Kevin Windham. Why not? I'm going to put Kevin Windham on that top 3 list, because I was such a fan of, still am such a fan of that guy. And had he not been directly in Carmichael era, he very well could have been one of the best of all time, probably. The most exciting rivalry, the most exciting rivalry in motocross history. Trey Kennard, Ryan Villapoto. That was a fun year. I was just trying to think of something a little less obvious. Obviously, Carmichael Stewart, Dungey Villapoto. There's been so many good ones. Dungey, J-Law, Chad Reed, Carmichael Stewart, McGrath Carmichael overlap. What are some other obvious ones? Don't know. Oh, okay. So none of those were even podcast questions. Those were just Ethan topics. Now I'm going to dive into podcast questions. I hope this is entertaining, for gosh sakes. Driver Jamie, send me a message. Let me know. Shout out Driver Jamie, by the way. He just got back from England last night. He now is master certified suspension technician. It's a fish. It's a fish. Driver Jamie, we need to hop on a phone call immediately and figure out our game plan, because there's a lot of exciting things coming. Holy cow. All right, podcast questions. From Mike and Andrew. Dozer berms on the outside of flat turns. Do you stay inside of the hard edge, or do you ride the berm? So kind of like railing that crown molding, so to speak. It would totally depend. I am a guy that usually avoids outsides at all costs. I just feel like it's sort of like a cheapo way to go around the track. Although there can be some really fun outsides and some really fast outsides. So My advice would be, well, you said, I was going to say depending on the dirt, and you said inside of the hard edge. So that kind of answers my question. What you're referring to is maybe a hard packed dirt edge dozer mark. If that's the case, then avoid that for sure. You're better off flat tracking on the inside than you are trying to hit some unrealistic hard edge. It just sounds dangerous. Sounds like a good way to get a flat tire also. But almost every line is worth trying it at least once. Why not? Next question. Cam Juarez. Shout out, Cam. What are the physiological demands of motocross? Good word, by the way. Of motocross, and what would an ideal training plan focus on? Let me start that question over. What are the physiological demands of motocross, and what would an ideal training plan focus on for better race fitness? I've seen heaps of people recommend long and slow riding on the bike, i.e. zone 2. I'd imagine zone 2 has its place at the beginning of a training cycle, but given that amateur racers are so short and intense, 6 minutes per moto at the local level, it seems like high-intensity interval training would be a better fit. Wondering what your thoughts are and if there's been any conclusive research in this area. So, great question. My answer to that would depend completely on how much dirt bike riding that you're doing per week. I think let's give 2 examples here. The person that is doing a lot of load on the dirt bike, so let's say 3 days plus, the dirt bike is taking up a lot of your zone 4, zone 5 heart rate time. So therefore, the exercising that you're doing off the bike, cardio-wise, you're probably going to benefit more from like the base building type of workouts where you're cruising in zone 2 for longer durations, because it's helping with recovery and it's also making you more efficient at operating in those zone 2, zone 3 areas, as opposed to just kind of like your body getting used to you just burning sugar all the time and skipping to zone 4 and zone 5. So there's something to be said for that if you ride a ton. Now, if you're only riding, like, let's say even once a week, you for sure should be supplementing your high heart rate stuff by doing shorter, higher intensity workouts, like HIIT workouts, high intensity interval training, right? Where you could be 40 minutes, 30 minutes, 20 minutes, 10 minutes even maybe. But let's say 20 to 40 minute range, so shorter duration, but really getting up into the zone 4 and popping into zone 5 in that as well, so that you could just up that ceiling a little bit. That's one thing I need to be doing is I'm doing none of either at the moment, but for me to get on the bike, I feel like right now I'm riding at class, right? So I ride once a week, and the riding I do once a week is like 15 minutes worth of seat time. It's almost nothing. I would benefit the most from going to the gym for about 20 to 30 minutes and just like sprinting on the treadmill or doing some high intensity interval training for sure. I think would benefit me the most at the moment, because when I get on the bike, I feel sluggish right now. My heart rate goes to the moon, and like I'm not in good enough shape to where when I'm spiking heart rate, it's getting stuck up there a little bit, and it's taking me a while to get back down, which is usually the sign of somebody being in good shape, is a person that could be 175 beats per minute, and then 20 seconds later, if they're resting, they're right back down to like 115. Normally I am very good at that, but right now, holy cow, I go and demonstrate and I pull off at class, and it's like I got to sit there for 30 seconds while I'm trying to catch my breath. Great question though, Cam. And if you guys have specific questions like that for your needs, send me a message in the app, because everybody's schedule is different. Everybody's needs are different. So not that I'm a professional in that specifically. I'm sure I can either point you the right direction or give you a general guideline that could be helpful. Now we got IG polls. And we're at the 30-minute mark, so this is perfect. We're going to be about 35 minutes all in, which is dialed. IG poll. Hi, AJ. I'm new on a 125. I'm from South Africa. Shout out. South Africa. I was wondering if you can discuss key tips for setup. You're new to a 125. Key tips for setup. Let's see. Get a seat with some ribs going across the top of it. The reason I say that is because I think that's honestly like the most important first bike modification that you can get, because modern day bikes, the seats are too darn flat and you just slide right off the back of that bad boy, no matter how good your technique is. I rode a bike at class in New Mexico yesterday or the day before, and I couldn't stay where I was on it was a Husky, and I sat down and slipped straight off the back. I mean, that's an exaggeration, but had I been doing a moto, I would have had such bad arm pump. A seat that has ribs across the top will hold your butt in place. Invest in a seat cover, and a good seat cover with ribs going across the top. I use the Guts wing seat. Shout out Guts. They've been awesome to me over the years. They have really good seat covers, and I run the one that has the wing where it like bows out. So that way when I stand up, I have a gripping point too. So definitely worth trying that. Other bike setup tips, like I said earlier in the podcast, set the darn sag on your bike. Make sure your ride height, that bike is working together, front and rear, really important. And sharpen those foot pegs, or get some good titanium foot pegs and invest in some good foot pegs, because the way that I teach how to ride, a lot of your time is spent on either just that back row, right? Or if you're sitting, you're spending all of your time on front row. So you don't have a lot of like surface area of foot on foot peg. It's important to get those things sharp. So those are basic tips, right? Not even expensive stuff. Whoa. Oh, Derek asked Stark versus gas. I'm getting this a lot lately. I think people think I live on that Stark, which, well, lately I do. Stark versus gas. Right now, if you were to ask me right this second in November 2024, I'm choosing Stark for right now. Electric. I'm choosing electric. Just right now, in this stage of my life, having a daughter that is 11 months old, I like not touching my dirt bike after I ride it. And now, Stark, plug your ears, but I ride that bike and then I plug it in, and that's it. Nothing comes loose. Nothing is breaking. There's no maintenance required. I don't even wash it because there's nothing to wash. It's just like a big brick. So where like a gas bike, you'd have all these like, you got to get the mud out of all the motor. Like, I mean, there's nothing to spray the mud off of. So I just leave it dirty. And it's so freaking easy. If I were to go gas for this month in November of 2024, I'm going to choose a 300 two-stroke. I've been riding them at class lately, and that is like the perfect two-stroke. It's the perfect bike. You can ride it slow or fast, but it's such an easy bike to ride slow. I love the 300. Love it, love it, love it. I need to buy one. But I also need to buy... Guys, can we talk about how there's always a place for your money to go? Anybody else feel that way? A saying that I tell Amelia actually is that money grows on trees. So thank God it does, because the amount of money I spend is will make you want to throw up. And there's always a place for it to go. Every time I see the P&L, I'm like, oh, this was an expensive month, but next month I won't have as much to spend money on. I always find something. This month, it's a Supercross track. So whoopsie daisy, but spending $20,000 plus to build a Supercross track. So, and this month I need to buy a new dirt bike to ride that Supercross track on, other than my Stark. So there's $30,000 in expenses that I didn't foresee. But the good news is, the way that I've always operated is that it's not that I make money and then find a way to spend it. It's that I find a way to spend it and then I therefore make more. It's like the opposite effect. And it's never failed me yet. I keep making more. In fact, a mantra that I say in my meditations is I'm so grateful that I have multiple revenue streams that are forever increasing. And it's my reality. And I'm like in my mantra, I am grateful for that. What the heck was I talking about? Oh, Stark versus gas. Final IG poll. And actually this is a good way to segue in from what I was just saying. Bernard asked I don't even know, is this a question? Business aspect of motocross. I could talk all day on the business aspect of motocross. Business is turned into my passion along with teaching. I'd say teaching is the passion. Business is the thing that supports that passion. But there is something to be said for the creativity that is involved on a day-to-day basis to have a vision, articulate that vision to a team of people, and then move pieces strategically and solve problems strategically to be able to make that vision come to life is insanely cool. Insanely cool. And maybe the advice I would give people is have that outlook on your life. That's what your life is. If you really boil it down, you have the opportunity for your own life to create out of it anything that you want, anything that you can possibly imagine. And then you can start working towards that thing. I actually didn't realize that until I was doing it with the business. And then I took a step back and I was like, oh, you know what? I don't have to just do this with the business. I can actually do this with my whole life. An example would be I took the book Traction by Gino Wickman, which is, it provides an entrepreneurial operating system is what it's called, which is an operating system for a business, from you're creating a 10-year goal, building that, reverse engineering that backwards to be able to get you your 90-day rocks and to be able to get you that traction to the ground right here, right now, today. You can also take that and use it in your own life. And yeah, so I guess if I'm going to talk about anything right now, go read Traction by Gino Wickman. Whether you own a business or not, it doesn't matter. And read it for building out the vision of your life, especially the goal setting and taking that vision traction organizer is what it's called, filling it out. Again, not for your business if you don't have a business, but for your life, and look far into the future. In this book, the example is the 10 years and build out that 10-year mark, 5 years, 3-year, 1 year, 90-day rocks, and you can backtrack from there. And it gives you, when you work backwards like that, and you take that 10-year huge vision, unrealistic goal, and then bring it back all the way to a weekly and a daily objective and tasks to be able to get there, it helps you steer the ship. And it gives you traction to be able to do something about it now. The hard part about, and where people have reservations in making long-term goals, is they just think that they're unrealistic and they don't think that it helps them do anything right now, right here, today, which is, well, ultimately the most important part, because if you're not doing anything, nothing's going to get done. The action that you take every second of every day is what determines the next things that happen. You could sit there and think all you want and nothing's going to magically appear in front of you. Like, you actually have to take the steps. And in reading the book Traction by Gino Wickman, for me, it created a really nice visual of how to take those steps. And when you're creating the 10-year, the advice that I would give you guys is think bigger. So write something down, sleep on it, go back to it, read it again, think about it, and try to make it bigger. For example, like and this is a big difference, my 10-year originally was $10 million. It was $10 million for selling a percentage of the Moto Academy or something involving $10 million. And that remained the 10-year vision for a while. And then I finally thought about it and I was like, well, 10 years down the road is 2034, $10 million. That's not nearly a big enough goal. So now I've changed it to $100 million, which is 10 times different, and worked back from there. And actually, when I did work backwards, it made quite a bit of sense when I got to our 90-day rocks and even, your monthly and weekly and daily tasks. So audit that 10-year plan, think bigger. Don't share it with anybody if you don't want, because you will certainly, in anybody's 10-year, you tell anybody a 10-year plan and people are going to look at you like you're crazy. They're going to try to discourage you, whether it be maliciously or not. Very likely will not be maliciously, but they'll try to instill some type of like realisticness in you. And there's two pieces of advice I've got in life that have been extremely bad. One is be realistic. And I think that is horrible, horrible advice. And two is if something is too good to be true, it probably is. Also horrible, horrible advice. I lived a lot of my life kind of operating within those two things. And when you create your 10-year vision, you quite literally need to be pretty unrealistic with it. I mean, at least in my opinion. And take that for a grain of salt, with a grain of salt. But I've created an industry out of almost an industry that didn't exist. I am able to operate a business that makes more money than I could have ever imagined making. And it's the least amount of money that I'll ever make. Doing the thing that I love doing the most. I'm living my dream life and then some. A dream life that I couldn't even have imagined 5 years ago. And so to think what is accomplishable in 10 years, it's nuts. It's nuts. And everybody listening to this is capable of way more than what you think you are. Myself included, but certainly everybody else, especially Driver Jamie, if you're listening to this. Okay. Second half of this pod, we are going to dive in. We're going to do a little live stream action. If you guys want to be involved in the live streams, if you want to chat with me in a live stream, get inside of the Moto Academy app. Thank goodness our old app is finally out of the App Store. Shout out Subify, our last app developer, for stealing my money and for leaving the app in the App Store until recently. So shout out to those guys. Much love. And it's finally out of the App Store, thank goodness, because we were competing against ourselves. We had people subscribing to the wrong app. And now you can't, because there's only one app in the App Store that is the Moto Academy. And guess what? That is us. It's us. It's the right one. It's the best one. It's the only one. The Moto Academy app. After you subscribe to it and experience it and love it, leave it a review. I'd love to get to 1,000+ reviews. Getting that K next to a review. It's kind of like hitting that 10K mark on Instagram followers. Speaking of which, Coach Mitchell, go follow Coach Mitchell on Instagram. He's going to hit the 10K mark any day. Let's see what he's at right now. His posts are so good. He's got better stuff than the Moto Academy half the time on his page. Go check it out. He's got 9,412 subscribers on Instagram. Go subscribe to Mitchell Prescott 24. He should probably change that to Coach Mitchell so people can find him. I guess 24 is no relevance, but I guess his last name is relevant. Yeah, look at these views. 2.1 million, 2.6 million, 409K, 94K. Just absolutely killing the game. 250K, 361K. He's really intentional with the way that he posts, which is cool, and it translates to views. Okay. Live stream coming up next. All right. Part 2 of the Moto Academy podcast is going to take place live inside of the Moto Academy app. And we're live. Who's going to get the whole shot? The suspense is killing me. Is there a lag? Nobody's getting the whole shot? Everybody fell asleep at the gate. Gate malfunction. Gate malfunction, but Dakota Broach gets the whole shot. First whole shot for Dakota. Kenny C18 and Dawson 401 round out the podium. We got Cowie Ryan in the top 5. Bull 786, solid top 5. You didn't deleted. We got Brock Sealer. Shout out, Brock. Shaken Blake. Mark 24 in the top 10 from the UK. We got Ball 328. Ozzy. Shout out, Ozzy. Mind Moto. What's up, Allie? Jake Sims. We got Peyton Roof. Shout out Finn in the chat. Joe Parisi in the chat as well. I got a, what am I drinking? Magic Mind. Again, for those of you that listened to the first part of this podcast, this was filmed a different day. So not drinking 2 Magic Minds in one day. So what we're going to do in this episode, Mind Moto, thank you for asking. Doing really well. We just got back from a hike. We did a little cold plunge action. By we, I mean Allie did it. I skipped. But I've been using the cold plunge at the house. So tonight we're going to get the fire ripping and roaring. And then I'm going to hop in the cold plunge and then thaw out by the fire. And honestly, chef's kiss, there's nothing better than being absolutely freezing cold, coming back in and then just sitting by the fire. It is so nice. Who's got fireplaces? Shout out fireplaces. They're the best thing in the world. I don't care if I lived in a shoebox. If my shoebox had a fireplace, I'd be happy. Shout out Ethan and a good fuzzy blanket along with the fireplace. Never hurts. Allie's at work. BRB. Shake and Blake, we put a tree up and Allie returned it. So we had a tree up for one day and it got returned. So not sure what happened there, but it didn't cut it. We usually get real trees. Are you in the UK, AJ, Ozzy? No, I'm not. Not at the moment. I will be in, when am I going? June? June? May. Thank you, Moto. Going in May. Thanks, Ethan. Going in May. Unbelievable. Okay, so what we're going to do in this live stream is I want to bring on Yeeted and Deleted, and we're going to talk. I'm going to ask all of the FOMO questions that I have from the guys that hopped in and held it down for Moto Academy and did the 24-hour race at Glen Helen. I was supposed to do it, bailed last minute because I was afraid, and I want to say Yeeted and Deleted might have actually been not originally on that roster and kind of hopped in last minute potentially. Could have that story wrong, but I'm going to ask some questions. I know that they had some of the guys on the live stream with Jackson and Dave Drakes on Sunday. So shout out to whoever watches that on Sunday. I certainly don't. Shout out Jackson and Dave Drakes. Jake Sims, I've already booked into the Moto. We got a lot of UK people in this stream. I've already booked into the Moto 101 training. Of all the classes we have anywhere in the world, Moto 101 fills up quicker than any other. I mean, that one's way out, and we've already probably sold, I think we're doing 2 days there, and we've probably already sold 50 spots. Like, it fills up quick. So glad you didn't wait, lock down your spot. Shout out. It's going to be super fun. Could you check your messages? I had a few questions. Hey, whenever the live is over, yeah, Landon, I won't be able to tonight, but I will first thing tomorrow morning. If it's something you can ask on here. Landrake, I think, is booked, Mark 24. I've heard the confirmation on my end. I don't know if it made its way onto the website yet. Maybe we were just waiting on them to sign the contract, but we had a date locked in. We had a rental price agreed upon. So we should be good to go. If it's not on the website, it should be literally any day now. That one was locked in. Little update on the Supercross track that we're building in New Hampshire. I haven't really talked much about it on social media. First of all, I guess I've just been so busy with other things. And also, it's getting built so quickly that I was like, screw it. I guess I'll just kind of wait until it's finished or close to finish, and we'll hype it up a little bit more. We'll have all winter to hype up that track. So I go up there tomorrow. I'm at my Connecticut house now. We're going to drive to New Hampshire tomorrow. The hard part about building this track is it has to be challenging enough to be able to train a Supercross Futures rider or a professional Supercross rider like myself to be able to be productive on it. But it also has to be safe enough for the average person to go and ride and race. And it is not impossible, but it's very difficult. And every single obstacle has to be basically just built to perfection. If you do one thing a little bit wrong, it can get a bit dicey. We are going to have a designated pro section like they used to a long time ago. 9 whoops Metamoto. No, we're going to have a 12 whoop minimum. So if there's a whoop section, it's going to be long. And I'm so freaking excited. And then we'll have one designated pro section, which will be 2 lanes that only the pros will be able to ride. So I'm going to go there tomorrow and kind of like walk it out and work with the track builder, who is Robbie Marshall. If you live in New England, you probably know who that is. And start piecing together how exactly and where exactly I want what. They've spent a lot of the last week bringing dirt over. They dug it from the motocross side. I think kind of where it floods, where the pond area is. And apparently from the videos and picture updates I've got, the dirt looks amazing. So, gosh, I can't wait. It's in Winchester, New Hampshire, for those of you asking. And when that is open, I didn't buy the property. It's not going to be where my full-blown community takes place, but I think we're going to go pretty all in with a lot of the ideas that I have to almost like give them a test run, because it's so close to my house. It makes a lot of sense. We'll probably have Starks available for rent. I want to, maybe we could turn a couple of things there, existing structures, into like Airbnbs, so that way people can fly in and get an experience of like, you know, just flying in with a gear bag and renting a bike and riding for a couple of days. Kind of a lot of the ideas that I wanted to implement otherwise. So yeah, we will see. It's going to have a 1/4 mile whoop section. Absolutely. You didn't delete it. Are you in the comment? You're in the comment section. Let me know if you're ready to hop on, and I'll see if I can get it to work. Evan, is there going to be a Sunset Ridge summer camp? Yes, 100%, or not 100%, but 99%. Yes, they were just waiting to lock in the exact date. And I'm hoping that we don't have to wait too much longer. They said we might have to wait until December or maybe even January to figure out the date. But yeah, I'm hoping that's not the case, because I want to get that thing announced. How built will the track be at summer camp? Oh, Kenny, the Supercross track is going to be finished like by the end of next week. So what that means is that the weather continues to be good, then I'm going to be riding it this season. Fire at Will just got the whole shot. Jeez, he came out freaking strong. Oh my God, what reaction time. Fire at Will, that is unbelievable. And then next season, we're going to have that thing in full effect. We'll have it really only open for Moto Academy peeps, which would be cool. We'll have the Moto Academy race series, and then we'll, of course, have summer camp where we'll have access to it as well, which is going to be epic. Jake, what goes on in summer camp? Would it possibly be in the UK? In 2025, no, but that is very possible that the UK would be, I think, a really good spot to do a summer camp. It's basically just Monday through Friday, and it's the most epic, most fun thing ever. AJ only owns military or yoga clothes, nothing else. That is true. And it's funny you say that, Jackson, because underneath this is Lululemon. So yes, you're right. Whoopsie daisy. I like to mix it up, man. I like to mix it up. I like to cover all ends of the spectrum. Did Eden Deleted respond back? Watch, I go this whole time and talk and never even bringing them on. We need to get them back as a sponsor, or Viore or Aloe, or one of those would be a good sponsor. All right, you didn't delete it. I'm going to bring you on here. Thanks for being patient. I talk a lot. Sorry. Okay, invite sent. Do you have a poncho liner or a smoker's jacket? I have a, I don't know what they call it, but it's like a super waterproof that goes above this. It's camo. And I have a couple of those that are sweet. Yeeted and deleted. Can you hear me?
How's it going? Can you hear me okay?
You sound beautiful. You sound beautiful.
Okay.
Where are you at?
I am currently in Sedona, Arizona, which I know you're talking about a mountain place, looking for a place in the mountains to live.
Okay.
You need to check it out.
Okay. I've never been, so I could add that to the list. Is it
Sedona and Flagstaff are both good spots.
Is it desert feeling though?
Sedona is a little bit more desert feeling, but Flagstaff is up in the pines, somewhere up like 8,000 feet roughly.
I guess just being born and raised East Coast, I just have a thing where if it's not green, I feel weird, and it doesn't feel homey. But yeah, I bet you that I could get used to it. I'm sure it's probably a me thing.
Flag would be more what you're looking for then.
Yeah. Mind Moto. Have a good night, man. See you later. You didn't delete it. I want to hear. I definitely have some specific questions for you, because I watched Cowie Ryan's vlog, which apparently he ghost dropped it. You guys didn't know it was coming out. It just came out of nowhere. That's such a Cowie Ryan thing to do.
Yeah, pretty
much. So it was. How long ahead of time how much lead time did you have going into it? Did you know you were going to be a part of it the whole time?
No, basically, we were at the track one day, and Greg was talking about that you weren't able to make it out, and like kind of explaining to my wife like the whole situation was like, oh, Tyler's going now. Like I had no like I didn't even hear it then, and it wasn't until I was basically in the truck on my way home that day that the wife was like, "So you're racing the 24-hour Glen Helen race?" And I'm like, "I am." Like that's that's pretty much how it went. And
The
then
Moto Academy
I
draft. It
reached
was
out.
just a draft. You didn't have a choice.
Yeah, I reached out to Austin Bott, who was kind of he was really the like the quarterback of the whole team because he him and his dad did the bike work. Like I dropped my bike off to him at the track one day, and he picked it up. He ordered parts, and like I'm just sending him money to order parts. And then as the parts came in, him and his dad just grinded it out the week before the race, which was not the ideal plan, but with all the last minute decisions that got made, that's how it ended up. So
Well, shout out Austin because the bikes look, that was the first thing that caught my attention. I was like, oh, the bikes are legit. And I felt so bad that I wasn't there because it was 3:30 on both the bikes. I'm like, how cool is that? They look good. The
yeah.
graphics look super cool. Shout out Roger, new member in the comments. Shout out Roger. Hope you're doing well over there. First, these questions are going to be absolutely all over the place, but I'm going to ask them just based on, for those of you listening, watching, I've done the Glen Helen 24-hour before, so I know how amazing some of it can be. I know how horrible some of it can be. How were your light setups? Did you have good lights?
Um, we did, but Austin's bike, we had an issue where he had the headlight on the bike, and then he also had LEDs, like colored LEDs, so that we could identify him out on the track or any whoever was riding. Those ended up drawing too much current from the battery, so that's what was the root cause of our bike issues throughout the night, and it took a little bit to figure that out. But other than that, the headlight was amazing from the guys who rode it at night. By that point, I was concussed from a crash, so I was no longer riding at that point. I did try uh, in the daylight the next morning, but it was a no go. So, but Greg specifically, I know he said that he loved the headlight. The headlight was an awesome setup.
So you bit the dust?
Yeah, fourth gear clipped a rock or something going into a corner that I couldn't see very well because the sun was on the horizon and straight in my eyes, and I just high sided in fourth gear.
Which part? Was it a section that maybe you could
The
describe and I
truck
would
track.
remember? Oh, the truck track?
Yeah, except it wasn't. It was like it was where you're like transitioning from one part of the track to the other.
Yep.
So it was pretty deep there, and the braking bumps got pretty big. And then there was a lot of like I don't know soccer ball sized rocks uh, turning up through the dirt.
Yeah.
So I think I clipped one of those rocks with the rear wheel, and then the bike swapped, and then I remember at one point in the air looking down and I'm over the seat and the rear fender straight out in front of me and I'm like, oh, this one's about to hurt.
Uh,
So
what time was that? That was daylight?
it was right at sunset. I was the last rider on my bike before we switched to the night bike.
Man. Yeah, that there was a lot of treacherous parts about the track and I wonder how similar it was or if it was based on like the GoPro shots that I saw of you guys, a lot of it looked pretty similar from what I remember. And the transitions to and from the truck track were scary because it was
Mm.
super rough and rocky. Like out of nowhere, you hit a massive rock and stupidly high speed. That was the good thing, I guess, about the bike that I was on when I did it is I was just on a battered 252 stroke that was slow as molasses. So like I wasn't going that fast, which I think is what kind of was the saving grace for me. But so they had some lighting issues on one of the bikes. That was your team's bike.
Yeah.
Did somebody experience like they get out in their lap and then the lights just stop working halfway through a lap type of situation?
No, so it actually killed the engine of the bike. So Greg actually, or the real GP for those who don't know, he was on top of a mountain and the bike just gone. And so the worst part about that was if he would have continued going the same direction that the track slowed, he would have ended up in a gnarly single track and he would have been blocking the entire track with a dead bike trying to push it through the single track. So he actually came back down the mountain on the double track portion, but it's a hill climb that is fourth or fifth gear tapped all the way to the top. So there's bikes flying past them like every couple seconds, just flying up there. So I ended up running over there and I grabbed I just had my cell phone on me. So I used my cell phone flashlight. And as he got closer to the bottom, I was waving my cell phone flashlight, slowing down the riders that were heading up the hill. And then I pushed them for like 300 yards all the way back to the pits.
Oh
So,
my God. It wouldn't be a 24-hour race if something dramatic like that didn't happen though. Was it was that a
right.
section where it was stupidly dusty? Because that was the one thing I maybe remember the most was just
Yeah.
like between the trying to see at night, seeing in like the when the sun was in weird spots when it was going down and when it was coming back up, when the dust was that bad, my eyes hurt. So there was like the one thing I fought the most the whole 24 hours were my eyes because I couldn't freaking see a thing. Was it same situation?
Yeah. So I was, and here's the kicker to that point is that I was told that it was going to get windy at some point. It never got windy. So the dust just lingered there.
Oh,
And both mountaintops were just silt beds.
yep.
And it just, like, if you stepped in it, a little
Just
bit of
poof.
dust would come up
Yeah.
off the ground. Yeah.
Uh it's
So,
so I mean, and you were having my memory of it was like a lot of those sections that were the dustiest were like these kind of like almost not hill climbs, but sort of like you were kind of going up over
mm,
hills in the back, quite literally not able to even see, certainly not past my front fender. Like you were kind of just seeing the front
yeah.
end of
And
your
they were
bike.
looked out the whole way, too.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh
Yeah. It
man.
was nuts.
So sounds very similar. Epic, but at the same time horrifying and definitely pretty dangerous, really. Um, who? So did you guys strategize? It sounded like in the video that both teams almost had guys that did the daytime hours and then guys that were designated just to nighttime. Is that kind of how both of the teams were breaking it up? What was the strategy?
That was the original idea, but I think because a lot of it, because we only had five guys, that kind of ruined that plan. But basically,
Wait, was it one
me,
team or was it two
Ryan, and
team?
Alex,
Was it one or two teams?
it, it was technically two teams. Originally was the plan, but pretty much everybody that could still ride at night was riding at night. So basically, Alex, Ryan, and I were supposed to be day crew, and then uh, Greg and Austin were supposed to run night crew. But Alex and Ryan ended up running a lot of night laps as well. So,
I just had an idea, as Jackson just commented. Said that Dave challenged me to Ironman it versus him next year. I kind of want to go just like we kind of planned this year as a unit, but the catch is that everybody Ironmans on their own. I don't know how possible that is. Like, do you need a full team just to get one guy to Ironman? Or you probably at least need some support system of at least a
yeah,
mechanic, right? Or somebody making you food, something.
yeah, you need at least a couple people, because if you think about it, like if you got one guy for pit crew, he's got to be up doing pit crew the whole night. So if you have a couple, then they could switch back and forth, as well as like if you got one guy doing pit crew and you blow a tire, say you swap rims right away, but you want to swap that blown tire, at the same time, you can still have one dude manning the pit crew while the other guy's, swapping the tire for you.
Oh, imagine how fun that would be if we had all a Team Moto Academy there but on their own Iron Manning it. Like the strategies that there would be. I just picture myself trying to go really fast so that way I would give myself more time to sleep, right? If it were like if it were me versus Jackson and like Dave Drake's or whoever, I mean Mitchell's fast, but the rest of Moto Academy, I'm like, okay, I'm just
Actually,
gonna get the biggest lead I can, and then that way I could sleep a little longer.
Actually, I think your theory for learning technique and riding 50% is the way to go because that's what all the guys who win the Ironman class seem to do.
Mm-hmm.
Like when you watch them take off on a start, they kind of just roll off the gate.
Yeah.
They're not sprinting, you know.
No, there's no rush. I mean, there's definitely no rush. It's like you just gotta be consistent and just tick off. Our event's just got the whole shot.
Yeah.
Man, I love the dedication to the Alley Cats whole shot school. There's a lot of people that are coming out the other end of that thing with stupid reaction times. So guys, keep this.
Jackson asked me if I'd do the Ironman, and I told him, give me a 125 with like 10 top ends, and let's go.
10 top ends. Yeah, that is probably what you need, huh?
Right?
How did you guys feel? I think I saw Kyle Ryan comment a few minutes ago that it was the hardest thing physically and mentally he's ever done on a dirt bike. Did everybody kind of leave the event that next day like, I'm good, I'm never going to do this again? And then did that kind of turn around into like, would you do it again?
I would 100% do it again. I had a blast, but I also served in the Marine Corps, so I've been through like 24-hour long, sufferfests and longer. So like I knew, I even talked about it in the Cowie Ryan video. Like I knew it was going to be like a mental battle against yourself, like
Mm-hmm.
to get back on the bike. So, and I knew that in the moment it may not be fun, but afterwards is where it's really fun. So, or
Yeah,
where you look back at it as fun.
having a Marine experience, Marine mindset going into that is huge because it was what would you say was the longest out of anybody that was there Team Moto Academy? Like who rode the most and how many hours would you guess that they rode?
Alex, hands down. A lot, and I don't know how many hours just because he rode multiple laps every time he went out.
Local A class?
I think, yeah.
Would you guess he did 10 plus hours or less than that?
Um, no, it was less than that. Probably at least like 3 or 4. Sorry, I'm just moving inside because it's getting chilly out.
Oh, you're good. You're good. I'm
All
curious to know. I did quite a bit because when I started, I think the first time I went out, I did 6 or 7 laps, like right off the bat before I even
Okay.
passed the bike to anybody because I was so excited and I was having so much fun. I just wanted to keep going. So even right off the bat, like 6 laps I was doing, I think. What were your lap times? Do you remember?
My best one was 20 minutes, and that was the first lap. We averaged between like 20 and 25, and had like I know my crash lap where I crashed really hard. I had multiple crashes in that one lap because I was kind of loopy when I got back on the bike. Uh, but that one was like 29 minutes or something like that, just because of how many times I went down. But average, I would say 20 to like 23 was like the real average lap time.
Who had the fastest lap time on your team?
Uh, I don't really count my first lap because it was the start one, but I think Alex did outside of that one.
I wonder if it was the exact same layout or not because I want to say, do you know what the pro guys, like the fastest people there were running? Any idea? Was it like
Oh,
16 to 18 minutes?
the the pro guys, there was some running in the 15s,
Yeah.
15-minute
Yeah.
times.
Okay. So that sounds about right because I want to say I was doing 16 or 17 minutes. Um and I was a little bit off pace. I was maybe a minute off pace. Um
Yeah.
and that felt
Is my
fast.
camera working for you?
Well, just as you say that it's not. Yeah,
Okay,
your
I got you
good.
back.
Can you guys in the comments here and see us okay, by the way? I know a couple people had Fire at Will said the app botched on them for a second. All good.
Oh, Austin Bot said the fastest pro time was 14 minutes.
Man. Who were
And
the heavy hitters there? Who is like the fastest guy? Do you know?
for the pro team,
Yeah.
I'm not sure, but the pro team that won was SLR Honda, and they were cooking the whole time.
And they have a team, right? That's not an Ironman type
Yeah,
situation.
I think theirs was four riders and one bike is the rule for that.
Oh, it's so much fun. We've got to keep it on our radar for next year, and I'll just make sure that I don't double schedule. Like it would be so fun if we got like a big group to go out and do it. I know that there's one on the East Coast too, and I think it's in New York. I'm not sure where, but yeah, it's just an epic thing to do,
So
and it's like story. Like that's a story that you'll have for ever, right?
I think Alex and I could have ran better lap times if my bike was set up for it. Because I just have moto suspension on my bike. I don't have,
Mm.
like it's a 23KX 450. And like I said the other day with Jackson and them, the double track in the moto sections, like it felt decent. But the single track is where it really killed us, just because specifically the second single track portion, there was no room to move and pick your line, so you couldn't really avoid the rocks. You just had to go through them.
And your stuff
You
is too
know,
stiff for that.
yeah, and maybe for I think Alex said that when we made some adjustments, it was good for him. But for me, I'm like 160 soaking wet, so I just think that it was too stiff and bouncing me around.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, that can make life definitely way more difficult. Also, I mean, the whole
yeah,
thing is no joke, though. How rough it gets, like the difference between your first lap to the later laps, especially in my situation too, where like, I did my first lap at probably what time does the race start? Like 10 a.m.
10 a.m. Yeah,
So I probably did my first lap around 11 or noon, and I probably did my last lap at 8 a.m. So the difference in the track in that 24-hour period is like absolutely mind-boggling. Did they do it the same way, I imagine, where they watered the track, but then as soon as you start going up over the steep hill and you were out of that, up over the crest,
yep,
like forget it,
yep.
everything was not watered, obviously.
The worst part mentally for me after was the fact that I realized that my last lap where I crashed, I was running the fastest lap that I would have had that day, just because all the parts of the track was starting to click for me,
Hmm.
and literally, and I had even backed it down in the faster section. So going into that corner, I was going into it slower than I had every other lap because the sun was in my eyes. Um, but it still caught me because I couldn't see, some of the obstacles that I was riding through. So
Did you ever memorize it, or did anybody on your team say that they memorized it?
I had a lot of the big portions of the track memorized, but there was some individual corners that my brain would like catch up as I'm going through a section, like, oh, I remember this corner's coming up
Uh-huh.
next. So that was the way I did it, was like I didn't care about the moto track because you can see everything, as you're going uh, through the moto track. Then when you get to the top of the hill, I memorized, okay, we've got this big long straightaway, and then there's this ridge. After that ridge, I have another big long straightaway, and then it drops down into a single track section, because the first time I missed the turn for the single track section. So after that, I never missed it again because I remembered, it drops into these bushes here. So like the the way that I pieced it together worked really well for me mentally to, know what's coming up and what
It's
to
it's
prepare
so
for.
fun, isn't it? To try to Austin said about 98% of it by my last two laps. I did enough laps to where I had memorized it 100%, and it almost got more fun then because I was like really able to, like, by the time I had memorized the whole thing, I was really piecing it together, and it got super fun. Also, another strategy that I used, and I don't know, you guys will have to tell me if any of you did this, but the first lap that I went out, I was second or third person on my team. So, you know, it's an hour, it's at least closer to probably 2 hours into the race. I took out of pit row behind somebody who looked fast, but not stupidly fast. And I was like, all right, hopefully this is like a guy that you could tell he had already been out there, or I knew he had already been out there because, like, by the way he was coming through pit row. I hopped in behind him, and then that's how I learned. So my first lap was done behind somebody that was riding a pretty good pace and had already done laps and knew where he was going. So it like expedited my learning process. Did any of you guys have like a lap one strategy like that?
I did the start, so that wasn't really an option for me. And my start, my main concern was just don't lay down the bike,
Yeah.
which because I just wanted to have like a relatively clean first lap, and I knew that I'd probably be towards the back of the pack, but I just didn't want to have us like 10 minutes behind the pack because I crashed it, or whatever. So that was my main goal. And then what I did is Ryan hopped on after me, and I actually filled him in information as we
Yeah,
were
yeah.
switching. So I was like, you know, there's motor sections, there's double track sections. In the single track, because of the way the bike was acting, I was like, take your time going through the single track. Everywhere else, it's fairly comfortable, and he's even lighter than me, I think, or about the same weight. So like he probably felt a lot of the same stuff that I felt riding through the rocky single track. And then I did the same thing with Greg when he went out for his first lap, because at the bottom of the first single track section, one side of this rock ledge was like a staircase going down and pretty easy to just roll.
Mm-hmm.
And then the left side of that same rock ledge was like a 4 foot straight drop. So because it was starting to get dark, I was like, when you get to the bottom, towards the bottom of the first single track, stay to the right. So
Yeah, so you were the guinea pig first lap out, and that had to have been a little nerve
yep.
wracking. Austin just said I just kind of winged it a little bit, but he at least has uh two other 24-hour experiences and works experience. So I was nervous too going out for my first lap because I just didn't know, right? Like I didn't know how gnarly, technical, and tight some of the stuff would get, or I just had no clue what to expect. I was pretty surprised. There were a few sections, like there was one where you got, it's super single track, very very tight, and it was single file. Like there's no way you were passing somebody in this section, and it was like in rocks, like you were almost in like a rock
Yep.
cave type of situation. Super crazy, crazy tight. And
Yep.
I was so scared the first time I got to that section. And even I think before or after that, it's pretty tight single track. And that freaked me out the first time going through it because I was like, what the heck is this? But
I
that's, I think,
I
where I started
crashed
gaining
so
the most
many
time.
times
Oh, through
there.
there?
Yeah. So, and it was just, there wasn't much room to crash there. So it
Mm-hmm.
really, the bike just ended up leaning up against that rock ledge.
Right. Yeah,
But there
multiple
was a
times I
couple
did one of
times where
these
like,
and just get stuck up against the rock for a
yep,
second.
there was a couple times where like I smacked my shoulder on it pretty good, because the bike caught and I just went. So,
Local A class just got the whole
um,
shot. Shout out local A class. Man.
you were asking of me earlier about my preparation, and one of the things I wanted to say is I didn't really have preparation because it was probably about a month that I figured out I was going to be doing this, and we already had like obligations in the weekends lining up to it. So like I couldn't like just go, train for the 24 hour because, we had family obligations or whatever. So I basically just was like, all right, it's going to be a mental grind, you know, get whatever riding you can, and just work on, technique and stuff like that. And then just ride what you can see, like that was my mindset. Like, don't expect it to be easy. Don't expect it to be difficult. Just observe what's coming at you and adjust fire accordingly. So,
Did you find that as you were riding, were there any kind of Moto Academy things popping into your mind? Did you find it a good time to be practicing and executing technique? Because for me, backing it down, just because you're out there for so long, right? Being able to back it down to learn something that you didn't know and to try to memorize something that it was so long. It was like such a perfect opportunity for me to just work on technique. Did any of you guys find that?
the first or 2 laps I went through that gnarly single track that we were just talking about, where I had the rock ledges. Um, I After the first lap, I dreaded going through there, right? So I had a negative mindset, like, the first couple laps. And it was lap 3 where I was like, all right, you're going to go through here. You're going to not lay the bike down, and you're just going to slow it down a little bit more than what you have been. And that was the first time that I was actually able to get through there without tipping the bike over. And it by no means was fast, but the problem I had is the trees were so short, but going over the single track, that if I tried to stand up, I would hit my head like every time. Like,
Wow.
so I'm like 5'11", I'm not super tall, but on the bike I'm pretty tall. So I had to sit down through that whole section, which was really messing with me because I'm used to, hey, it's getting rough, get up off the seat. So once I did that mental switch where I slowed down mentally as well, that's when I was able to do it. And I'd say that was the main thing that I focused on, was the mindset stuff, not so much like the physical technique
Yeah.
aspect of it.
Yeah. Mike and Andrew goes 15 minutes is nuts for 9 miles. A lot of it is, there's definitely some technical parts, but a lot of it is super high speed too, which probably accounts for being able to
Yeah.
do that many miles that quickly. Local A class goes, shout out the devil's anus section. Shout out.
Oh yeah. I do have uh, some YouTube footage or GoPro footage that I'm making into a YouTube video. I just have a family situation that I'm addressing, so it's going to be rolling out late. But I will post one of my full laps. It won't be like one of my fast laps, but you'll actually see where I'm like falling and stuff like that, and stalling the bike in that section. And then I also have a highlight clip segment of the first lap, because literally it was, I would let somebody by me and then they'd crash, and then I'd pass them, and then I'd let somebody by me and then they'd crash, and then I'd pass them. And that was like the entire first lap.
No way.
I almost ran into a dude on a hill climb at one point because of the dust, you know. So,
That's funny. That sounds like me in Supercross, where I'm like, all right, buddy, just go ahead. Go ahead. And then they mess up and I go back by them. I'm like, I don't even want to pass you. Just go ahead.
yep,
Uh,
yep.
that's epic. I'm so glad that you guys were able to come together and make that happen. Thank you guys for doing it. And thank you for, like the fact that we were able to have it on the Moto Academy socials for the day, I think was super cool. I really want to in 25, I've probably been saying this for a little bit, but I really want in 25, I want to do multiple events where we can just bring in people that are local or not. If they want to fly in, great. And just do fun events together, because there's so many different styles of fun events that we can be doing and participating in, just bringing the community together to do it. And I want to use 25 for me personally as a year to just like expand my horizons riding wise and just do all the things. So, yeah, I think it was super cool. Thank you guys for holding down the fort. I have to go eat dinner. You didn't delete it. Thank you for hopping on here, and sharing it. As soon as you get that GoPro edit done, post the link in here because I want to watch it.
I
And
will.
I'm excited to see it. And I just, yeah, I'm bummed. I'm bummed I didn't make it, but I cannot wait. I can't wait to get some things on the schedule for 25 and do some fun stuff with the guys. So, okay. Well, thank you guys for listening. Thank you for watching. This is going to be part 2 of a podcast that I recorded yesterday. So when the podcast comes out next week, you guys will have to listen to it. At least the first half, if you just caught all of this. The first half was a solo episode. Other than that, what else? I think that's it.
Shout out the whole 24-hour team.
Shout out to the whole 24-hour team. Yeadon Deleted, Austin Bott, The Real GP, Local A Class, Cowie Ryan. That's it, yeah?
As well as all the support from everybody's families that we had, because Austin's dad helped wrench on bikes. He was our pit guy. He was feeling bikes out. So was my cousin Corey. And then a couple of the significant others were out there with us as well.
Yeah, that's awesome. I mean, to do a 24-hour, it is a proper team effort in every way, shape, or form.
Yeah.
Keeping the bikes going, food, the whole deal. Yeah, that is so cool. Well, thank you guys. Shout out to Team Moto Academy. Love it. All right, I'm out of here. Thanks, Yeadon Deleted. Thanks, guys.
Yep.
See you podcast.
See you in December.
See you in December. Moto Academy Ride Day, December 14th, I think. See you guys there. Okay, toodles.